Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Cincinnati Reds. We are at opening day for the 2026 season. Will be our fourth season as general manager of the Reds. We've had steady progress with the team. 77 wins our first year, 83 wins and a wild card spot our second year, and 89 wins and a NL Central title last season. So expectations are high in our view. We didn't make a ton of changes this offseason. We're still 25th in the league in budget, 26th in player payroll. So we're doing it, I don't want to say on a shoestring, but we definitely do not have a expansive and massive budget. The big changes to our pitching staff, brought in Zach Gallen as a free agent for less money than we had been paying Aaron Nola, who we traded away. Had to give up a pretty good prospect and a couple of other decent prospects to get Nola's contract off our books, but think that at least for this year we'll be a little better off with Gallen in the rotation. We don't have as long-term a financial commitment at this point, and we saved some money for the next several years. And then Chase Petty, who had a nice year for us split between AA and AAA, will be making his debut in the major leagues as our fourth starter. Other than that, we also brought on Andre Palante in a trade with the Cardinals, who we think can be a useful reliever for us. And other than that, it's pretty familiar names on our pitching staff. As far as the lineups, not a ton of changes there too. The big hope is that just a lot of these young players in their early to mid-20s continue to get better. We've got Edwin Arroyo up as a full-time shortstop this year, taking over for former shortstop of our Reds, Nick Ahmed, who we traded away rather than pay his $6 million option for this upcoming season. Also going to have Jay Allen in center field full-time this year. He took over last year for us late in the year from TJ Friedel. Really not a ton of different players, quite honestly. It's all names that we are familiar with on the 26-man roster as far as our 13 position players. So the hope is that some of these players who are 23, 22, 24, 26, 24 years old continue to improve, and that we're able to improve our team that way as far as our offense and our defense, along with the changes that we already talked about that we made to our pitching staff. We will have some players coming off of the injury list. A guy who would be a new addition to our team, Benny Montgomery, a Rule 5 pick. Like his potential, just not sure if we're going to be able to get him onto the major league roster, but he is on the IL coming back from a strained ab, so we will be able to at least put him on a rehab assignment in AAA for 20 days before we have to make a decision as to whether we put him onto the 26-man roster or send him back to the Dodgers. Clark Schmidt, who had been penciled in as our number 5 starter for this year, going to be out for another couple weeks, and then he'll probably go on a rehab assignment as well. So probably not until the end of this month of April that we'll need to make a decision on where he slots in. And then Jack Neely, who is also a Rule 5 acquisition for us. Think he could be a pretty useful arm out of our pen. Unfortunately, he suffered a torn meniscus a little less than a month ago. Going to be out for another 3 months and then a rehab assignment after that. So probably won't need to make a decision on him probably until sometime in August. So most interesting thing over the month of April is going to be what happens with Benny Montgomery, since couple days left to recover from his injury, and then, as I mentioned, he can be on a rehab assignment for close to 3 weeks before we have to make a decision on his future in the Reds organization. Turning to the preseason predictions, in the American League, looks like the Red Sox and the Guardians are expected to be the top 2 teams. Moving over to the National League, and our team's expected to make a huge step forward, 102-60 in this simulation, winning the NL Central by 17 games if this ends up being a reality. That would be by 10 games the best record in the National League. As I mentioned, I felt like we improved our pitching a little bit. I hope that our offense will improve simply by younger players continuing to get better, but don't necessarily think on paper, particularly given our relatively meager payroll, that this is a team that's going to roll over everybody else in the National League. I'm glad that the Gremlins at OOTP, when they crunched through this season, had the Reds do really well, but I would be shocked if this team ends up as a 100-win team. Certainly coming off of an 89-win season last year, would love to get in the 90s with this team, but I don't know that we're going to improve by 13 games this season. Ellie De La Cruz, Austin Hendrick, Nelvi Marte, three of the guys in their mid-20s that I mentioned. Actually, they're all 24 at this point. In their second, third season in the majors in all cases, expected to have big years for us. And Corbin Burns, who was our ace last year, pitched brilliantly over the last 4.5 months of the season after a poor start, ended up second in the NL Cy Young voting, expected to have another nice year for us this year. Looks like Nola with San Francisco also expected to be pretty solid, but we have moved on from him and his contract and wish him nothing but the best. And we've got a pretty extensive list of owner goals this year, or as Patrick DeBonis referred to them, our honeydew list. Certainly we want to reach the playoffs. I would hope that with the youth getting better, we could improve our team batting average this year. Not sure how we're going to do in terms of the profitability goals. We are trying to spend every penny that the Castellini family gives us because we want to be as competitive as possible. We haven't, unfortunately, been able to improve fan interest this offseason, given that we really didn't bring on a lot of free agents. And if our road record improves, that will be entirely coincidental. Certainly hope that it happens, hope that we're a better team than we were a year ago, but not something that I have a ton of control over at this point. And with that, let's get the season underway. And our Reds are off to a decent 6-5 start here during the 2026 season. Unfortunately, just suffered a pretty significant injury. Shortstop Edwin Arroyo going to be out with an oblique strain for 5 to 6 weeks. Was hitting just .216 this year, but certainly his glove is going to be difficult for us to replace. Don't feel like we've got a great replacement for him at the major league level with the fact that we did move on from Nick Ahmed. Certainly we're going to be spending $6 million on him to keep him as a backup. Nelvi Marte could play the position. We'd like to have someone a little better defensively there. Errol Vera may be a guy that we have to slide into there. We do have a few decent utility infielder options in AAA right now. Jose Barrero and Oswaldo Cabrera, who have been part of our organization for some time, as well as Orlando Arcia, who we picked up as a minor league free agent just a couple of weeks ago when he was without a job. He's probably the most established of those players, or certainly the most established of those three that I just mentioned in the major leagues. So it might make sense to bring him up, but going to give that a little thought. Obviously, we will need a replacement, even if it's only a guy coming off the bench. I think I probably am going to lean towards Vera. We don't have a better defensive option in terms of range available, and at least then we can ensure that Encarnacion Strand and Matt McClain are getting regular time at third base. Hopefully, continue their development. They're both 26 years old. Neither has become a big-time player for us this year or over the course of their careers, and they're both struggling this year, as you can see. But they're also not getting tons of playing time thus far, particularly Encarnacion Strand. So at least maybe this injury will allow us to get a few more at-bats for those young guys. And I think we've decided to bring Arcia up. Veteran player, going to be a solid backup, can play second short for us if we need. Could play third in a pinch, although he hasn't played there much over the course of his career. Probably will refuse the assignment when we send him or try to send him back to AAA in a month and a half. Once we're at the point where we've got to make a decision on Arroyo, but that would be fine since we'd still have Barrero and Cabrera in our organization. Unfortunately, the last week and a half or so has not gone that well for the Reds. You can see we're 3-7 over our last 10, record 8-11, 3 games out in a relatively tight NL Central. We do finally have the first decision to make as far as our injured players. Clark Schmidt, as you can see, just recently started a rehab assignment, but we've got a decision to make now on Benny Montgomery. And he hit pretty well in AAA for us, 328 with 4 homers and 9 ribbies and 58 at-bats. We gave him a little time in right and left to try to diversify his defensive abilities a bit. I don't want to let him go, so I am going to bring him up to the Major League roster. I think he's a player with good potential. And we are going to send down Will Benson, who's got 2 option years left. Left-handed power hitter, not quite as good defensively in the outfield as Montgomery, but still a more than serviceable defensive player. But he hit 216 in the majors for us last year, hitting just 238 this year with no homers. Small sample size of 42 at-bats, but if he's not hitting home runs for us, he doesn't have a ton of value. So we're going to demote Benson to AAA, bring up Benny Montgomery. We're not going to force him to be our starting left fielder anymore. But we're going to see what the youngster can do. His bat looks like it could definitely be major league average. He's got a lot of speed, should be good on the base paths, and is very good defensively. Like the high work ethic to hopefully get him to reach his full potential and probably reach it by the end of this season if he gets some decent playing time at the major league level. But the way he played in AAA, he definitely gives us a nice option for our outfield. He honestly, with the way he could hit, could down the line be in the mix to be a starting center fielder over Jay Allen. Certainly like Jay Allen's glove better, and Jay Allen is hitting 274 for us this year. If he just has a close to average-ish major league bat, he's going to be a pretty valuable player with that glove and that speed. But certainly on paper at least, Benny Montgomery could be, a better hitter than Allen as far as offensive production out of our center field, or even though he's not quite as potentially dynamic defensively. So it does give us another option out there to think about as we try to construct this roster for this season and into the future. And the month of April is in the books. The Reds have an 11-14 record, so it hasn't been a good start. Fortunately, the NL Central is mediocre again this year, so we're only a game and a half behind. I definitely feel like we are missing the excellent defense of Edwin Arroyo at shortstop, although he wasn't hitting much this year. 216 average and 37 at-bats. Certainly by far the best defensive shortstop in our system, and think that not having him out there every day is impacting us. We're actually 1 game better than our Pythagorean record because we rank last in the National League in runs scored at this point. We are second in runs allowed, so we're kind of getting the good pitching that we had hoped for. But you can see the offense is last in almost every category, so certainly need to figure out a way to jumpstart this offense. Our defensive efficiency and zone rating, both mediocre to bad. So the pitchers have been holding up their end of the bargain so far, but the defense has been mediocre, and the offense has been brutal here in the early stages of the season. Hopefully with the weather getting a little warmer in May, that will awaken our bats from their slumber. You can see fan interest hasn't changed at all. attendance down pretty significantly from last year. Hopefully we can turn this season around, not just on the field, but also financially in the coming weeks with a better performance on the field, hopefully encouraging more residents of Cincinnati and the surrounding area to come out and support their Reds. And the Pirates remain hot in these opening days of May, and we are not, with a couple consecutive losses, so 4.5 back in the division. Benny Montgomery, the Rule 5 acquisition, just suffered an injury, chronic back soreness, which is going to impact him for 3 weeks. You can see he hit 241 and 29 at-bats for us. I do like him. And want to keep him around. This probably isn't the worst thing for us, though, we can put him on the IL for another 3 weeks now till he's healthy, and then we can send him on a rehab assignment after that. Likely we'll be bringing Will Benson back up. Has not hit well in AAA, but I think we probably will still give him a chance, although, with him down there, Alan Serta is a guy that we've been wanting to see for a few years, 26 years old now, not a huge time prospect, but certainly does have interesting home run power and eye. I think actually we may bring him up just to see what he could do. Will Abreu, Rule 5 pick from several years ago, is also down in AAA for us as well. So we've got a lot of options to kind of fill those 4th and 5th outfielder roles for us. Right now we're going to see what Serta can do, since Benson hasn't done much since he went down to AAA. And our Reds have been playing a little better of late. We finally got the record back over 500 at 21 and 19. Taking a look at the NL Central standings, we're in second place, just a game behind Pittsburgh, still similar to last year, a pretty tight division. You can see Ellie De La Cruz and Jay Allen first and tied for second in the National League in stolen bases. Will Warren, 5th starter, 1.65 ERA, so he's done an incredible job for us. Clay Holmes tied for second in the league in saves. And, of course, Aaron Nola, the guy that we traded away, had a entirely missed season for us in 2024 and then was pretty mediocre for us last year, leading the National League in pitcher WAR in the early stages of the season for the San Francisco Giants. So sometimes you just can't get anything right in OOTP. Speaking of things not going right, have some injury issues that we are going to need to figure out. We just put Orlando Arcia onto the IL with a back strain. He was reasonably effective for us, hit 262, was a part-time starter for us at second base since we brought him up. So that'll leave a little bit of a hole, although Arroyo should be back in the not-so-distant future. Huascar Ynoa, former starter for us, has been really struggling this year with a 6.89 ERA over 15 and 2/3 innings out of the pen. Diagnosis pending on him, probably not the most inopportune time for that, given that Clark Schmidt is ready to come back from his rehab assignment at this point. We can't keep him down there any longer, so we'll likely look to get Ynoa on the IL, even though hopefully it's not going to be a real serious injury. And I mentioned that Will Warren has been really good for us as a 5th starter. Corbin Burns, Nick Lodolo, and Zach Gallen have all been respectable, but not great. Chase Petty, the rookie, has struggled. I am going to see if maybe David Bell wants to move him into the pen. He's gotten 8 starts at this point, only going about 4.5 innings, given his 40 stamina, and he hasn't been particularly effective. Certainly look at his profile and would love to keep him in the majors to see what we can get out of him. David Bell wants to move Will Warren up to the 3rd spot in the rotation ahead of Zach Gallen. I don't really care the order that they go at this point of the season. And he does want Clark Schmidt in as a follower. I am not going to have him be a follower, but we will keep him in the rotation as our fifth starter. That will allow Petty to move into a long relief role. Hopefully he can get his bearings at the major league level a little better in that type of role. Also going to bump Schmidt's pitch count up a bit since he is back off the IL. And see if this pitching staff can continue helping drive us further up in the standings. And as it turned out, we were perhaps a little aggressive putting Inoa onto the injury list. Only has a sore ankle out for 2 days, but unfortunately we did put him on the IL to be able to bring Clark Schmidt up. Not the end of the world, given how poorly Inoa has pitched thus far this season. His performance was the worst of anyone on our pitching staff, even worse than Chase Petty. So he'll get a nice rest on the IL, and then we can maybe put Inoa on a rehab assignment down in AAA where hopefully he can get himself straightened out. I think he could still be a pretty useful reliever for us down the line with the profile he has. The fastball and slider are both excellent. Has definitely struggled as a starter after that nice 14-11 year for us in 2024. Definitely benefited some luck with the best BABIP in the National League that year. But you look at his profile with those two really good pitches, that excellent stuff, and acceptable movement and control, and think that as a reliever he could be a pretty useful pitcher for us if we can get him straightened out. And the month of May has been going much better for our Reds than the month of April did. You can see we're taking series after series at this point. We split. We took the first series of the month against Miami, lost the series to the Nationals, or actually we tied the series to the Nationals 2 games each. Then we took 2 out of 3 against Miami, swept St. Louis, took 2 out of 3 in Cleveland, took 2 out of 3 in Seattle, and now we just swept the Mets. So the record up to 27-20, and we are 2 games up on the Pirates at this point, 8-2 in our last 10, won 3 in a row. More good news in that we now have Edwin Arroyo ready to come back. We put him on a quick rehab assignment, 18 at-bats in just 3 games in Louisville, hit fine down there. So we've already opened up a spot for him on the roster. Not going to have to force start him, but I'm sure he will go plug right back in to become our starting shortstop. And we also have Montgomery on a rehab assignment, again, back in AAA. Serta has been okay, 250 average, 1 for 4. The one hit was a solo home run. We are, force starting Montgomery as a right fielder right now to try to get him fully developed there, ensure he gets playing time. Certainly when he is through the 17 days that he can spend down in AAA starting every day and working on his defense, presumably barring something else happening as far as an injury, we'll send Serta back down to AAA to ensure that Montgomery remains in our system. I think with that defense, that speed, and a bat that looks like it can be a pretty average major league bat, he's a pretty valuable 4th or 5th outfielder. And the month of May was good on the field for the Reds. It was great on the field for Will Warren. We talked about him earlier. Start of the year as our 5th starter, is now our 3rd starter. 7-0 record with a 1.78 ERA. 5-0 with a 1.42 ERA for the month of May. So even better then. Taking a look at the standings here on June 1st, we're up 3.5 on the Brewers at this point. The Pirates have been fading a bit more recently. Our 31-22 record is the 2nd best in the National League, behind only the Dodgers. So definitely feel like we've gotten the season moving in a better direction over the last month. Quick look at team statistics. Still 1 game better than Pythagorean expectations, 18-10 at home, 13-12 on the road. 20-8 record for the month of May, though, so more similar to the type of finish we had to August and September of last year when we made up a lot of games in the standings with that plus 700 winning percentage for the month of May. Offense has gotten a little better. We're up to 11th in runs scored, 11th in batting average, which is where we were a year ago. Stolen bases first in the NL, doing well with base running as well, with a lot of youth on our team. First in the league in runs allowed, first in starters ERA, sixth in bullpen ERA. Definitely getting some good performances at this stage of the season. You can see Burns, Lodolo, and Warren and Gallen, all really nice years to the start. Gallen, the 3-5 record isn't great, but 3.25 ERA over a team best 63 and 2/3 innings is still very respectable. Schmidt, obviously early stages of his season, allowed 5 runs over 10 innings pitched so far, 0-1 record. Bullpen in generally looks okay. Chase Petty ERA at 5.32. We'll see what the youngster can do there. Taking a look at the lineup quickly, we'll just take a quick look at who the top hitters are at this point in the year, just based simply on WAR. Ellie De La Cruz hitting .313, 9 homers, also his 19 stolen bases. Catcher Tyler Stevenson hitting .276 with 4 homers. Kei Kadama, .252, 6 homers. Nelvi Marte, .258 with 7 homers. And Christian Encarnacion Strand hitting .317 with 4 homers and 5 ribbies in a pretty small sample size. Those are the 5 highest WARs on the team among our offensive players. Outfield has been a problem for us. You can see Jared Kelnick and Austin Hendrick, both either on the interstate or close to the interstate, negative WARs on the season. Matt McLean, another bad year thus far after a pretty poor season last year. His roster spot and his future with the organization is certainly in jeopardy. Jay Allen banged up a bit now. His WAR is actually negative because the offense is trending in a bad direction, hitting just .218. He's also got some potential throwing issues with an elbow contusion right now, but still like the glove out there. Certainly going to have some decisions to make down the line. Inoa, we need to send on that rehab assignment to the minors now. Hopefully he can get himself straightened out there. And then Benny Montgomery has 10 days left in AAA before we're going to need to make a decision on him as well. And we're now 10 days into June. Season continues to go well for the Reds. 37-24 record. Got the winning percentage up over 600 at this point. Fan interest continues to lag, which is disappointing, although attendance has been better of late with the team playing better. The kind of rotation, pitching injuries kind of continues at this point. Just found out Clark Schmidt's going to be out for 3 weeks with an elbow strain, so we're going to place him back on the IL. And we are going to give Mr. Inoa another chance. He's been in AAA for 2 starts at this point, pitched reasonably well down there. Not going to put him back into the rotation. I think we're going to see what David Bell wants to do and then probably overrule him. Yeah, he wants to give Inoa a chance at the back of the rotation. I am not going to do that. I don't know that I want to put Chase Petty in there either. Rever San Martin is a guy who's been a lefty for us for a few years. Don't get a ton of innings pitched out of him. Last year he had injuries, so that was part of the issue. But we may give him a chance to get a few more innings out of him instead of Inoa. We may do that. We are going to do that. Hopefully Inoa can continue to get himself straightened out. Chase Petty has been a little better out of the bullpen. He would be an option to go back into the rotation too if San Martin doesn't get the job done. And as the cycling of players continues, Montgomery's rehab assignment is also done at this point. 287 batting average in his 2 stints in AAA this year with 9 homers and 122 at-bats. Definitely want to keep him in the system in our organization, as we've talked about. So at this point, we'll have to send Serta down. At this point, he's added just one more hit, hitting a .167 in his first 12 major league at-bats. So he's down to AAA Louisville, and we are going to be bringing Mr. Montgomery back up to the major leagues. And as we get close to the end of June, it's June 24th. The month hasn't been as good on the field as May was, but we're still 43-31, easily in first place in the NL Central with a 7-game lead over the Brewers, 8.5 above the Pirates and the Cubs. Only team in the division with a winning record at this point. You can see Ellie De La Cruz third in the league in ribbies. He and Jay Allen are second and third in stolen bases. Will Warren's ERA has crept up to 2.20, but still 10-0 on the year, leading the National League in ERA, tied for the league lead in wins with Nick Lodolo, who's 10-3 with a 3.06 ERA. Aaron Nola, of course, continues to lead the National League in pitcher war. He is 6-5 with a 3.07 ERA for the Giants after we traded him away. Clay Holmes third in the league in saves at this point. So some pretty good individual accomplishments for some Reds players in the early stages of this year. We've had Orlando Arcia in AAA on a rehab assignment, probably going to need to waive and DFA him at the end of this assignment. And Jack Neely, the Rule 5 acquisition, finally healthy. We are going to get him started on a rehab assignment to see perhaps what we have with him and whether he's worth putting on the major league roster in about a month. Clark Schmidt's recovery from that elbow strain not going well. He's out for an unknown period of time at this point. Enoa has the ERA at the major league level down to 5.16 at this point. Does have 36 strikeouts in 22 2/3 innings, so he's been doing a respectable job for us most recently. Chase Petty also has the ERA down to 4.40, so he's certainly been more effective out of the pen than he was in those 8 starts that we gave him at the beginning of the season. And while the Reds continue to play well, some bad news from the legend Rick Jameson. Nelvi Marte, diagnosed with a torn hammy, going to be out for about 2 months. That is going to leave a hole in the lineup, losing the young second baseman. Hit 30 homers with 26 steals for us last year. Not quite as dynamic offensively this year, but still hitting .256 with 11 homers and 273 at-bats. Has 5 steals, been only caught once this year. So Marte is going to be going on the injured list. That will allow us, though, to let the top prospect in our system make his major league debut. You may remember we've had Braylon Minier down in AAA, learning how to play third base. Not quite completely proficient there, but his bat looks like it's ready. He's angry that he's not in the majors. He's the number 16 prospect in baseball. Hitting .311 with 12 homers and 270 at-bats in his introduction to AAA this year. I think particularly with the injury to Marte, we'll be able to bring him up and ensure that he gets some regular playing time, either at second base or third base for us. Going to make sure that he's out there every day getting action at the major league level, but don't think there's too much more we could do with him in AAA. Obviously would love to kind of have him fully proficient at playing those positions. Would love to have him a little higher in terms of the ratings development that our scout thinks he can have happen. But as I said, he hit .300 last year in a AA season that was abbreviated by injury. He's hitting over .300 in AAA. He may not be as good as he's going to be, but I think his bat is ready, particularly with the fact that we're going to be able to ensure that he gets playing time every day at the major league level with Marte out. And perhaps not surprisingly, after his rehab assignment was done, Orlando Arcia refused staying in the minors, so we have waived and DFA'd him. But looking to see if we can pick up anything in a trade. The Braves are offering Gilmar Diaz. Looks like he could be a decent reliever at the major league level. Nothing great. Doesn't throw all that hard, and he is a fly ball pitcher. Does have decent movement on his pitches, but he's got a couple option years left. So honestly, for a player that we only signed on March 29th to be able to potentially get anything out of value for him is probably a positive. Don't know if they'll do that trade straight up, but we still have several days before Arcia needs to have a decision made at this point, so we'll go ahead and submit that offer to the Braves and see if maybe we can extract a little bit of value before moving on from Orlando. And we are going to have to throw in another player in the trade with Arcia to the Braves for Gilmar Diaz, but I think that he's a pretty respectable prospect, and we've got him under our control for another couple years. Don't think he's ever going to be a big-time reliever in the major leagues, but could he be the 6th or 7th guy out of the pen on a decent team? If he fully develops, I think he certainly could be. So we've got to throw in one more player. We've got second baseman Austin Callahan, who's stuck in high A ball for us. Not the greatest personality in the world, so we'll happily throw him into the deal also. So we'll add in Austin Callahan, and we will complete that trade, bring Diaz into our organization, and at least get a little bit of value from the minor league free agent that we signed a couple months ago. And a quick review of the month of June, we were 14-11, so continuing to play solid baseball, not the torrid pace that we were at in the month of May. We're right in the middle of the pack of the National League, 8th in runs scored, got the batting average up to 9th, which was one of our goals for this season, to improve from 11th. Not real significant improvement, but step in the right direction. 3rd in the league in homers, 1st in the league in stolen bases. 1st in the league in runs allowed. ERA overall is 2nd best. Our starters are 2nd. Bullpen is middle of the pack. Defense has definitely tightened up. 2nd in the league in defensive efficiency. 3rd in zone rating. And we're actually 2 games below our Pythagorean record at this point. So hopefully that's a sign that we can maintain and hopefully even increase this lead that we have in the NL Central. 6.5 up on the Cubs. But we do remain the only team with a winning record in the NL Central. Unfortunately, right now, both the Dodgers and the Braves have better records than us, so we would be hosting a wild card season if the season ended today, but only 78 games into the year. There's a lot of time before those situations will be finalized. In a month after Will Warren won the National League Pitcher of the Month, teammate Nick Lodolo gets the same award. 11-3 on the year, 2.84 ERA. His arbitration estimate next year over $22 million, but he has been such an effective pitcher for us. It's going to be hard to not pay him everything that he's looking for. Only looking for a one-year deal at this point. At one point, he was looking for around $30 million a year in terms of a long-term extension. Also jump in quickly to see our mid-season review of the goals. 47-33 record here, 80 games into the season. Robert Castellini happy with the record so far. Happy that we've improved our batting average to 7th from 11th at this point. Unhappy that we haven't brought in an MVP. Not pleased with our profitability. Not pleased with fan interest. And not pleased with how we're doing in road games. So he's good with our progress, but overall impression is not quite as cheerful when he looks at our team history on and off the field. I don't know. I don't know what you're looking for, Mr. Castellini. We've got the 25th budget in baseball, the 27th payroll in baseball, and we look like we're well on our way towards making the playoffs a third consecutive season. So although you are not pleased with us, I think that this simulation is going reasonably well so far. Take a quick look before finishing up the episode at the pitching staff. Burns 6-5, 3.43 ERA. Already talked about Lodolo. Zach Gallen not having a great year. Record down to 4-8 with a 4.33 ERA. Will Warren, we've talked about, still has not lost a game this year. And Rever San Martin has had 4 starts for us now. Let's just take a quick look at the game logs from those starts. 1-2 in a row. Game scores over 60 in 3 of the 4 games that he's pitched. Really only given up 1 run in 3 of the 4 starts. Had a rough outing and a loss against Toronto. But San Martin certainly doing a solid job for us as a 5th starter. Clay Holmes, the ERA is ballooned to 5.34. Does have 20 saves, but he must have had a rough outing or 2 recently. I'm sure there's 1 or 2 brutal games in there. Yeah, this would be the one that did it. Gave up 5 earned runs, including 3 hits, 2 walks in a third of an inning against the Dodgers. That pushed the ERA from 3.70 up to 5.47. Had another rough outing after that. Looks like he's gone 4 consecutive scoreless outings at this point, including a couple of saves. But early stages of the season, although we're now halfway through the season, so particularly for a reliever, 1 really bad outing can ruin things for him. Max Meyer, Andre Palante, Justin Brule, Brett Martin, and Alexis Diaz all look like they're pitching reasonably well. Petty and Inoa doing okay. Certainly would think about giving Petty another chance in the rotation down the line. But right now, with the way San Martin is pitching and the fact that Schmidt should be back at some point, even though the return from that injury remains unknown, hopefully we will, have some options for our 5th starter. Turning our attention to our everyday players, Ellie De La Cruz, 21 homers, 318 batting average, 22 stolen bases. He was a 30-30 guy for us last year. Looks like he has an outside shot at becoming a 40-40 guy this year. Certainly having a really nice season for us. Big-time player. Austin Hendrick hitting just 214. His 2nd full year in the major. Does have 14 homers. Kelnick hitting just 225, does have 13 homers. Kei Kodama hitting 249 with 13 homers as well. Encarnacion Strand has been really good in a small sample size, 319 with 8 homers and 94 at-bats. He's largely been our 3rd baseman against left fielders. I actually just let David Bell reset the lineups just to see what he was thinking, but I am going to tweak those before moving forward in the game. Errol Vera hitting 242, Tyler Stevenson 258, Edwin Arroyo 262, and Jay Allen 245. Those guys are both a little over half a win above replacement at this point. Pretty solid defensive players. Neither has the greatest bat in the world, but we'll see how they do going forward. But it's been a solid start to the season. Not spectacular. 3rd best record in the National League at this point. But we look like we're well on track to hopefully get a playoff spot. And actually, we are the 2nd best record in the National League at this point since we've just gotten past the Braves in the standings. So things are going well for the Reds. Not a spectacular season, but certainly well on pace to get a 90-plus win season, which was kind of our goal. And we will find out how the month of July goes, if there's anything we need to do to hit the trade market. We do have some money to bring on some salary, figure out if there's any obvious holes that we need to fill. Hopefully there won't be any significant injuries that we need to fill. But it's been a good start to the year so far. If you've got ideas on what we could do better, would love to hear them in the comments. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.